Hello, beautiful community. What a blessing it is to be with you for a few minutes to discuss Mr. Putin's nighttime visit to hang out with Mr. Gerasimov in Rostov. What can we say about that? A few of you have asked, and I'll try to give a perspective. It was a bit weird. Putin arrived at night, shook Gerasimov's hand, and then walked up the stairs, and they sat in the room with a portrait of Mr. Putin above them. And then they walked down the stairs, and Mr. Putin said, "Hey, say hi to everyone," and got in the car. And that's it. That interestingly shows that tyrants and dictators can be shy. And indeed, completely irresponsible politicians can be shy. Sometimes Mr. Putin still is sometimes shy. There's all kinds of limitless stuff you can never see unless you happen to speak the language. But where's the politics in this? Obviously, it's a pictorial legitimation, once again, of Mr. Gerasimov, who did two things. He beat Mr. Prigozhin in their battle, their long-lasting existential battle, and he kind of presided over Ukraine, not making dramatic gains during the counteroffensive. So that'll do. He's sort of done enough of the job. But what's the bigger picture? Why are we seeing Putin being so active globally and within Russia if he's supposed to be so terrified of confronting anybody except at a 10-meter distance because he can't afford to catch COVID? I don't think Mr. Putin knows about long COVID, so he's trying to not catch COVID. And I believe that's for reasons of an underlying immunological situation that he's got. We don't know what that is. Now, I think that it's a story of acclamation, which is the ritual that the election that's going to take place soonishly in Russia will enact. And Putin is trying to make sure that he gives himself a lot of breathing space in case things go wrong. So what's this ritual of acclamation? It's a ritual that's supposed to say to the Russian people, look around, 80% of you positively support Putin and his project, which they don't. I mean, that nobody who studies Russia would say that. We know that there are people who don't like Putin very directly, and there's a small minority, but we know there's this massive depoliticized blob in the middle. They don't support a damn thing. Their position is a set of complex positions which we won't elaborate now, but it is not a million miles from a kind of net in which you could catch it, which goes something like this: do you support Putin? Yeah, can I go now? But the point is to demonstrate to the Russian people that if they're not feeling too hot on Mr. Putin, they're alone, they're isolated, they're not anything other than a distinct minority. Then the point is to show that to the people around Mr. Putin. I have got the Russian people with me. You, Mr. Member of the Security Council, Putin Security Council, don't. You, Mr. Member of my chatterization about Russia's historical destiny, don't. I do. Right? If there are any problems, you're going to face them, not just me. So know that. And thirdly, and unfortunately least importantly, it's to demonstrate that to the oppositional Russians, the Russian opposition abroad. You guys are not going to be able to roll any kind of significant rock up the hill. Because the Russian people are with me. And interestingly, a lot of the cheaper Western commentary falls into that trap, which is what Mr. Putin wants. The Russian people are kind of with him. 70% are with Putin, that kind of stuff. So that's going to be the point of the exercise. But the way the exercise can conceivably go wrong for Putin is if that process of acclamation does not manifest smoothly, if it doesn't look resplendently clear that the people are with him, if there isn't the appearance of the people being with him. And he's very conservative about that. One of the main reasons for that is the Pran Rebellion. It means that Putin can feel the ground under his feet, but he isn't sure that it's definitely going to be firm tomorrow just because it's firm today. And he's going to be very conservative about this. And you might think it's needless. I mean, there is no real prospect of Putin losing power through this election ritual, but he will approach it with great, great caution and make choices he normally wouldn't make about going around, putting himself in crowded situations, to give himself as much confidence that he can clear this barrier he needs to clear, even though the barrier is not very high. So he's going to be hyper conservative about this, and he's going to start early, and that's what we're seeing. Now, something that's really important for you to understand as you look upon this from outside is another instantiation of this business of two things, us needing to keep in mind two things, not just one. A lot of the stuff you're going to see Putin do will look kind of prosaic and banal. Abroad he's going to be talking about gas and oil and sanctions and pipeline and blah, 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 blah. At home he's going to be talking about prosaic things. And that can sometimes give the appearance of Putin as a kind of bureaucrat. And if Putin is being a bureaucrat here and being a bureaucrat there, maybe he has calmed down his whole stuff about Ukraine. Maybe he's calmed his stuff down a little bit. And maybe he's calmed down his stuff about Westerners, escalation against the West and so on. And the answer is absolutely no. He hasn't. So what you've really got is Putin living on, doing everything he needs to do until such time as opportunities arise to challenge the West, right? So it's really like you're having breakfast in your family house, and your family member sitting there and saying, yeah, I know how I had this plan to incinerate Ricky's house next door and then eat Ricky afterwards. Well, there's no avenues for that at the moment. So I'm really focused on my coffee grinder at the moment. I've changed the grind setting as well. I'm going to replace a couple of the burrs and, see what that makes of the beans I usually get. So yeah, do you think I should consider buying a second coffee grinder? What are you talking about? What coffee grinders are you talking about when you're suggesting that you're gonna immolate Ricky, and probably in a way that immolates us here too, and you're saying that you can't do that soon, so you're sitting around and having prosaic conversations until 3 years from now. These possibilities are how do you square these two things? It's not normal. It's not normal. Now I'm going to call the police on you as well. So you can combine this kind of banal bureaucratic normalization with what we've many times already discussed, this quasi-mystical, visionary commitment that is only getting deeper to engage in some kind of ill-defined historical self-propulsion that potentially risks, if not immolating the world, then immolating the future of one's country. But until you can do that, you're talking about your coffee grinders here. And it adds up. You can be both. You've got this compartmentalization whereby you've got banality and you've got a kind of persona that gives off a managerial air on the one hand. On the other hand, you've got this quasi-visionary stuff. And so I think that what's so strange about it for us is that Western people, of course, live with many prejudices. And one of our prejudices is that if you do enough of this managerial bureaucratic stuff, the mystical stuff can't survive. It'll just go away. You surely can't do that. But you can. But you can. You know, just like you can make various kinds of steps toward a free market economy without any kind of democratic institutions following. So it's entirely possible to focus on sort of dry, responsible, bureaucratic procedure and at the same time engage in sort of quasi visionary existential derangement. It's both. And so our prejudice is that modernity takes the mystical stuff away, and that is wrong. Putin is not, I'm going to talk about Professor Etkin's beautiful book at some point, Russia Against Modernity. But Mr. Putin's mysticism is not an anti-modern phenomenon. It's of the essence of the modern world.